Hello everyone, and welcome to the first installment of Toku Toy Theory. Here I take a look at the toys from Tokusatsu series, such as Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, and explore why they look and act the way they do, both in and out of series. So for today's subject, we'll be covering Kamen Rider Fourze. Now in the last video I said this would be a 4-part study, but it's technically going to be 5, as this is the intro part that will cover the basics. So in this video, I'll cover the Fourze driver, the Astro Switches, and Kamen Rider Fourze base state. So let's get started. Switch on. So for the first examination, we'll look at Kamen Rider Fourze's belt, the Fourze driver. This is what he uses for all of his different functions, from transforming to activating his different Astro Switches. So, this was a belt that confused a lot of people, and it was one that was kind of criticized for being one of the more bulky henshin belts. However, upon further look, it does make sense. The design is essentially based on a spaceship console, since that is what's used to control the different functions of a spaceship. There are 2 types of switches here. The first are the red switches, which are used for activation of Fourze, and are based on the same switches that an astronaut would use to power up the rocket ship. The takeoff lever that's used to activate the transformation, and then the different sockets for the interchangeable switches. And this is a concept that makes sense, as space shuttles are known for having very many switches, and it would have been impossible to fit all those switches onto one different belt, so instead, they chose to have the switches be interchangeable. And so we have the Astro Switches, which are these small switches that can fit into one of 4 slots, and activate different functions. They come in 4 types: circle switches, cross switches, triangle switches, and square switches. Each one corresponds to a different limb of Kamen Rider Fourze. And each one also serves a different purpose. Circle switches are generally used for offensive tools. Cross switches are generally used for long-range weapons. Triangle switches are generally close-range weapons. And square switches are generally utility tools. And each one fits into a socket using this plug-like attachment on the bottom. And that's how they snap in place when off. Switching the belt on will turn on the status monitor, which is an image of Fourze himself. It is basically meant to convey the idea of Fourze being a spaceship on its own, or kind of a spaceship turned into a space suit. So when each switch is plugged in, there's a confirmation that it's been inserted, with its corresponding limb lining up and saying the name of that switch. And so then, with the switches set in place, pressing down each of the 4 switches powers up the belt. That starts a countdown to the ignition. And pulling the lever activates the transformation. And there, the transformation into Kamen Rider Fourze is complete. It basically simulates the preparation and takeoff of a space shuttle, which is very clever, with the set switches being used to determine which switches will be used, and then the red ones being used to power on different systems. When everything's ready, the countdown starts, and then this lever is used for the kind of blast off. And so then, we can take a look at Fourze himself. So here we have Kamen Rider Fourze's first form, Base State. And here we can kind of see the basic concept of Fourze himself, which seems to have been to combine a spacesuit with a space shuttle for the installation and mobility purposes, as well as breathing capability that a spacesuit allows, along with the ability to attach modules like a space shuttle has. And so there are the 4 ports for modules with the 4 symbols. Now there have been comparisons to these symbols and the PlayStation controller buttons. However, there's also another comparison that can be made, which is the one that makes more sense, which is the number of lines that takes to draw each of these shapes. A circle is one line that starts at one point and then connects around again. A cross is 2 lines crossed together. A triangle is a 3-sided shape, and a square is a 4-sided shape. This is used to divide up the switches into 4 different categories, and so that each one gets 10 switches and 10 modules. It does have the standard colors you expect from a space shuttle, being white and black, with a little bit of orange added in there to add that bit of extra color to it. The head itself is designed after a space shuttle just about entirely, with the basic nose cone design going up on the top, and the wing fins on the side. And this being his basic state, or his basic form, doesn't have many special abilities. It has the standard punch and kick abilities, and doesn't really allow him to do anything special, which is where the Fourze modules come in. So, when Astro Switch is activated, that materializes a Fourze module that attaches to the associated limb and allows Fourze to control it and use it as either a tool or a weapon. And he can activate up to 4 at once, since he has 4 slots. With each one, they actually designed these shapes as basically a sort of matching system, so that for the toys, you'd tell which module goes where. In the same way you could tell which switch goes where. For some, they have a design that doesn't quite allow him to stand properly, but that's basically because just of the way they're designed, and how some are basically just designed as weaponry and not made with movement in mind. But the figures do have the articulation to basically compensate for that. And so here's just an example of what Fourze looks like with 4 modules attached, but usually he doesn't have 4. Usually, he'll use them in combinations of at least 2, if not 3. His most common combination is the rocket module and the drill module. Which he can use in combination for a limit break. This activates the Rider Rocket Drill kick. And it does allow for clever combinations, this being one of them, as it uses the power of the rocket and the strength of the drill, well, rather the propulsion of the rocket and strength of the drill, for a super strong kick that he wouldn't be able to obtain or basically execute normally. And the secondary combination that he likes to use is the other two. As this is another combination that makes sense, since with the help of the radar module, he can better lock on to targets for better accuracy with the launcher module's missiles. And that's another case where you could do a limit break, though you can technically do a limit break with any combination. And another smart idea, they have the basic parts or the different limbs on the display flash to let you know that a switch is on, and then they're static when the switch is off. In a similarly clever method, when you remove a switch, even if that activation switch is on, the light will be turned off to let you know that the switch is removed. When you put it back in, it lights back up. And it's also one of the earlier belts to have a kind of deactivation sound, which is done by flipping the switches back up. And that powers them down. From a conceptual standpoint, Kamen Rider Fourze actually makes a lot of sense, as this is the kind of stuff that, if used in real life, would be very useful for astronauts to use during space exploration, as that would allow them to make use of different tools for different situations, and use combinations of the tools for specific situations. And even within space exploration, something like the rocket drill kick could be used for breaking oncoming space debris or like meteorites. So it does actually make sense, and it does seem like within the series that was what it was originally created for, as the next generation of spacesuit. And it is a very clever just way of making a space-themed rider. And it does make logical sense when you look at it, which I think is great, because it's always nice to see when they put in these little touches and just to really go into their theme. And this is the kind of thing where it can be expanded on, and it did. Within the series, though they weren't all created at once, there were, from the beginning, blueprints for all 40 switches, and they were developed throughout the series, so that he wasn't overpowered at the beginning, and he gradually gained powers over time. And in the same way, we'll be looking at the switches a few at a time. So, for the next part, we'll take a look at the first 10 Astro Switches, along with the first 10 modules, and Kamen Fourze Elect State. For my next review, I'll be taking a look at the TKPB02 tire set formula, as what I'm going to be doing with these is essentially, I'm not going to have these be more than ones at a time. I'm going to try to split these and fill them between reviews, just so that there's never too much of one thing or the other. So that'll be the review, and then the next part. So until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, or share it. And you can check me out on Facebook at facebook.com/KRX50. And for now, this is KRX50, blasting off.